I stood in the doorway of our small laundry room, gripping the oversized shirt like it was a piece of evidence in a crime scene. The fabric was soft but heavy, the kind of material meant for someone at least twice my size. I turned it over in my hands, inspecting the unfamiliar logo near the collar, one I'd never seen before. My mind ran through the possibilities. Maybe it had been left here by accident. But by who? We hadn't had any visitors in months, and even then, it was only my dad during the holidays. He definitely didn't own anything like this. I took a deep breath and walked into the living room, where my fiancée, Emily, was curled up on the couch, rubbing the side of her swollen belly. Her long, auburn hair cascaded over her shoulder, her face glowing in the dim light of the TV. She looked peaceful, completely unaware of the weight in my hand or the growing unease in my chest. "Hey, Em," I said, trying to keep my tone casual. She looked up with a sleepy smile. "Hey, babe, what's up?" I held up the shirt. "Found this in the laundry." Her brows furrowed, and she straightened slightly. "What is it?" "That's what I'm trying to figure out," I said, stepping closer. "It's not mine, and it's huge." She reached out and took the shirt, examining it for a moment. "Huh," she murmured. "I don't know. It's not yours." "Nope." I crossed my arms. "And no one in my family recognizes it." She tilted her head, eyes narrowing slightly as if trying to remember something. "I feel like I've seen this brand before, though." I searched her face, waiting for more, but that was all she gave me. My heart sank a little. "Where?" She hesitated, then shook her head. "I don't know. Maybe at the store or something." That didn't sit right with me. Seeing a brand in a store was one thing. Having a random shirt from that brand appear in our laundry was something else entirely. A pit formed in my stomach. I wanted to believe there was a logical explanation, one that didn't involve late-night trysts or hidden betrayals. But nothing made sense. Emily must have noticed the way my jaw tensed because she reached for my hand, her fingers warm against my skin. "Babe, you're overthinking. It's just a shirt. Maybe it got mixed up with our laundry somehow." "Mixed up how?" I pressed. "We don't go to a laundromat. We wash everything here. Just us." She sighed, rubbing her belly absent-mindedly. "Maybe it got left behind from the holidays? Or maybe it was stuck in a blanket or something, and we just didn't notice until now." I wanted to believe her. I really did. But something about the way she said it, so easily, so smoothly, made the unease in my gut twist tighter. I forced a smile, nodding as if I was satisfied with the explanation. "Yeah, maybe." But as she turned back to the TV, my mind refused to let it go. Something wasn't right, and I was going to find out what. The shirt lingered in my mind long after the conversation ended. It was just a piece of clothing, yet it carried an invisible weight that pressed against my chest. Emily had dismissed it so easily, as if it was a minor inconvenience, a misplaced item that had somehow found its way into our laundry. But no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't shake the gnawing feeling that there was more to it. That night, as she slept beside me, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The rhythmic sound of her breathing should have been comforting, but instead, it felt like a reminder of the unanswered questions circling my mind. I replayed everything I knew, searching for gaps, for possibilities that could explain what logic refused to. The house had been quiet for months, just the two of us, waiting for the arrival of our baby. No guests, no shared laundry spaces, no reason for another man's clothing to be here. Yet, the fabric in my hands had been real. The brand had been vaguely familiar to her, but foreign to me. That detail stuck with me the most. If she had seen it before, where? And why couldn't she remember? By morning, the doubt had settled deep into my bones. I moved through my routine mechanically, showering, dressing, making coffee, while my thoughts remained fixed on the mystery. The more I tried to let it go, the more it clung to me. The shirt remained in the laundry basket, untouched. I hadn't thrown it away, hadn't hidden it. Instead, I left it there, almost daring it to offer up an explanation on its own. I found myself glancing at it as I passed by, as if expecting it to shift or change, as if staring long enough would reveal some kind of answer. By midday, the unease had turned into something heavier. It wasn't just about the shirt anymore. It was about the cracks it had revealed. For the first time since Emily and I had gotten engaged, I felt an unsettling sense of distance between us. It wasn't something tangible, not an argument or a cold shoulder, but rather a quiet awareness that something had shifted. A realization that trust, once firm, had been nudged ever so slightly off balance. Still, I couldn't bring myself to act on it just yet. Maybe I was being paranoid. Maybe stress, exhaustion, and the anticipation of fatherhood were warping my judgment. Maybe I was seeing shadows where there was only light. But deep down, a small voice whispered otherwise. And I wasn't sure I was ready for what it had to say. Days passed, but the feeling of unease never faded. If anything, it grew thick and suffocating, wrapping around my thoughts until I couldn't focus on anything else. I tried to bury it beneath daily routines, but even the most mundane tasks seemed to pulse with unspoken questions. Emily moved through the house the same way she always had, but now, every action seemed to carry a weight I couldn't quite define. I started paying attention to the little things, the way she folded laundry, the way she avoided eye contact when I walked past the laundry room, the way she absent-mindedly checked her phone more often than usual. I told myself I was imagining things, that I was searching for signs where none existed. But one afternoon, while she napped, I found myself staring at her phone on the nightstand. It wasn't locked, something she had never bothered with because we had always trusted each other. That thought stopped me for a moment. Trust. The thing I was beginning to feel slipping through my fingers. I didn't touch the phone. I didn't need to. The moment I realized I wanted to check it was enough. The fact that I even considered invading her privacy meant something was already broken. Instead, I focused on the shirt again. It still sat in the laundry basket, unclaimed, unaddressed. She hadn't tried to throw it away, hadn't moved it. It was as if she was waiting for me to forget about it, hoping that time would erase its presence. But I couldn't forget. Later that night, while Emily was in the shower, I went to the laundry room and picked up the shirt again. This time, I examined it with more intent, searching for any clue I might have missed. The fabric smelled clean but unfamiliar, not like our detergent, not like our home. And then, inside the collar, I noticed something I hadn't before. A faint mark on the tag. A name, half faded, written in permanent marker. It wasn't my name, and it wasn't hers. My pulse quickened. Someone else had owned this shirt. Someone else had worn it. Someone who, at some point, had been close enough to our lives for their laundry to mix with ours. The name wasn't entirely legible, but a few letters were clear. A J followed by an A. I stood there for a long time, staring at the faded ink, my mind running through every possibility. Every J name I could think of. Every connection Emily might have that I had overlooked. There weren't many, and of the few that did come to mind, one stood out the most. A name I hadn't thought about in months. A name I never thought I'd have a reason to. Jacob. Her ex. The one she swore she had cut out of her life completely. A chill ran through me. I hadn't seen him, hadn't heard her mention him, hadn't even thought about him since before she got pregnant. But now, his name, or something close to it, was staring back at me from a shirt that had no business being in our home. And suddenly, every excuse, every casual dismissal, every unanswered question about where this shirt had come from felt like something much, much darker. The doubt that had been gnawing at me wasn't just doubt anymore. It was certainty. And I wasn't sure I wanted to know what came next. The name on the tag burned into my mind like a brand. It could have been a coincidence, a random marking that meant nothing, but it didn't feel that way. The weight in my chest told me otherwise. I sat on the edge of the bed that night, staring at the ceiling while Emily slept soundly beside me. Her breathing was soft and even, her body relaxed in a way that mine couldn't be. I turned my head, studying her peaceful expression. The woman I loved. The mother of my child. And yet, the distance between us felt like miles. I ran through every scenario. Had he been here? Had she seen him? Was there an explanation I was missing? My rational mind tried to play devil's advocate, to remind me that I hadn't seen any actual evidence of betrayal. Just a shirt. Just a name. But when had Emily last seen him? Had she really cut him off? I remembered when she told me about their history, a long, on-again, off-again mess that had finally ended when she met me. She had sworn it was over, that he wasn't a part of her life anymore. And I had believed her. But now? The next morning, I watched her move through the kitchen, preparing breakfast like any other day. She hummed softly under her breath, one hand resting on her belly. She looked radiant, glowing in the way expectant mothers often do. And yet, all I could see was that damn shirt. I wanted to ask her again. Wanted to push until I got an answer that actually made sense. But something held me back. A quiet, unsettling voice in my head whispered, "You already know the truth. You just don't want to hear it." Instead of confronting her, I turned to something I never thought I'd resort to. I needed proof. That afternoon, when she went out to her prenatal appointment, I searched. Not in a frantic, reckless way, but with the quiet patience of someone who knew he wasn't going to like what he found. I checked the laundry again. Nothing else suspicious. The closets, the drawers, everything seemed in place. But when I moved to the front hall closet, the one where we stored things we barely used, my pulse spiked. Tucked beneath a stack of winter coats, half hidden from view, was a duffel bag. A bag that wasn't mine. With slow, deliberate movements, I pulled it out and unzipped it. Inside was a set of men's clothing. Large, loose-fitting, just like the shirt. A toothbrush. A phone charger that didn't match either of ours. A pair of sneakers, slightly worn. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a forgotten bag. It wasn't something that had been misplaced over the holidays. Someone had used this. Someone had been here. And suddenly, I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. I wasn't imagining things. I wasn't being paranoid. There was another man in our house. And now, I had to find out exactly who he was and why he had been here. The weight of the duffel bag in my hands felt heavier than it should have. It wasn't just fabric and shoes and forgotten belongings, it was proof. Proof that something was happening right under my nose. Proof that my home, my relationship, my trust had been invaded. I knelt there for a long time, staring at the contents in stunned silence. The toothbrush, the charger, the clothes, these weren't items someone left behind by accident. Someone had stayed here, lived here, even if only for a short time. And Emily had hidden it from me. My stomach churned as my mind raced through the possibilities. Was he here when I was at work? Was it recent? Or had this been going on longer than I even realized? I forced myself to breathe, to think logically, but my body refused to calm down. My pulse pounded in my ears as I zipped the bag back up, exactly as I'd found it, and shoved it into its place beneath the coats. I couldn't confront her yet, not without knowing more. Instead, I needed to watch, to listen. For the next few days, I paid attention to every detail. The way Emily hesitated before answering simple questions. The way she avoided the laundry room. The way she seemed more restless at night, shifting in bed, as if there was something she wanted to say but couldn't. I noticed her phone more, too. How she always kept it close. How she turned the screen away from me when she checked her messages. Something was wrong. And now, I knew I wasn't imagining it. On the third night after finding the duffel bag, I waited until she was asleep. Her phone sat on the nightstand, screen dark, silent. My fingers hovered over it, my heart hammering. I didn't want to be this person. Didn't want to be the guy who checked his fiancée's phone because he didn't trust her. But trust wasn't the issue anymore. I had already lost it. Taking a slow, steady breath, I reached for the phone. It was unlocked, just like before. My hands were steady as I swiped through her messages. Most of them were normal. Conversations with friends. Reminders from her doctor's office. And then I saw it. A thread with no name, just a phone number. No saved contact. The messages were short, clipped. Him, can I come by today? Her, not today. Too risky. Him, I miss you. Her, please don't. I can't do this right now. My blood turned ice. I scrolled up, my breath shallow, my hands trembling. There weren't a lot of messages, just fragments of conversations over the past few weeks. But it was enough. Him, are you going to tell him? Her, I don't know. I stopped reading. I didn't need to see any more. The truth was right in front of me. Emily had been hiding something. Someone. And I wasn't sure I was ready to hear her explanation. But there was no turning back now. I had to confront her. And I had to do it now. I sat on the edge of the bed, the phone still clutched in my hand, my heart hammering against my ribs. The messages were burned into my mind, each word cutting deeper than the last. This wasn't just doubt anymore. This wasn't paranoia or overthinking. This was real. Emily was hiding something or someone. I stared at her, asleep beside me, her breathing soft and steady. For a moment, I wanted to pretend I hadn't seen the messages. To roll over, close my eyes, and go back to the life I thought we had. The life I had built with her. But I couldn't. My jaw clenched as I placed her phone back on the nightstand. My hands felt numb, but my mind was sharper than ever. There was no easy way out of this. No scenario where I walked away without knowing the truth. I inhaled deeply, steadying myself. Then I shook her shoulder. Emily stirred, groaning softly before her eyes fluttered open. She blinked up at me, confusion creasing her brow. The room was dim, the only light coming from the street lamp outside. But even in the shadows, I could see the moment she realized something was wrong. She sat up slowly, her hands instinctively going to her belly, protective. What's wrong? I didn't answer right away. Instead, I reached down, grabbed the laundry basket by the bed, and pulled out the shirt, the same one that had started this downward spiral. I held it up. Whose is this? The air between us shifted. Her lips parted, but no words came out. I didn't give her time to search for an excuse. I reached under the bed, pulled out the duffel bag, and tossed it onto the mattress. The zipper was still closed, but we both knew what was inside. Her face drained of color. Tell me the truth, Emily. My voice was calm, too calm. Who has been in our house? Silence. The kind of silence that stretches so thin it's ready to snap at any moment. Then she swallowed, her fingers gripping the blanket as she exhaled shakily. It's not what you think. I let out a sharp laugh, one that held no humor. Really? Because what I think is that another man has been here. I think you've been hiding him from me. I think. My voice faltered, thick with something I didn't want to name. I think you've been lying to me. Her eyes glistened, her chest rising and falling faster. It's not cheating. My stomach twisted. Not cheating. That wasn't the denial I expected. Then what the hell was it? She wiped at her eyes quickly, like she was trying to stay composed. It's Jacob, she whispered. My ex. I felt something inside me crack, even though I had already suspected it. The confirmation still hit like a gut punch. He showed up a few months ago, she continued, voice trembling. He had nowhere to go. He was in a bad place. He asked for help. I couldn't breathe. So you let him stay? Here? In our home? She nodded, guilt written across her face. Only for a few nights. When you were at work. I didn't tell you because I knew how it would look. How it would look? I repeated, my hands curling into fists. Emily, it doesn't just look bad. It is bad. You hid this from me. You lied to me. Tears spilled down her cheeks now. I didn't cheat. I swear. He had nowhere else to go. I thought I was helping. I shook my head, my whole body tight with frustration. You didn't even give me the chance to know. To have a say? You let another man live in my home behind my back. Her face crumpled, and she wiped at her tears again. I made a mistake. A bitter laugh escaped me. Yeah, you did. The room felt smaller, suffocating. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that this was nothing more than a stupid decision. That it wasn't an affair. That it wasn't a betrayal as deep as my gut told me it was. But the truth was, I didn't know anymore. The trust we had was gone, shattered in an instant. And no matter what she said next, I wasn't sure it could ever be repaired. I stood up, grabbing my keys from the nightstand. Her eyes widened. Where are you going? I didn't answer. I just needed air. I needed space. As I walked toward the door, my mind screamed at me to turn back, to fight for answers, to demand the full truth. But my heart knew it didn't matter anymore. Because the moment she let him in, she had already let me go. The silence in the room was unbearable, thick with a tension that made the air feel heavy. My mind was spinning, my pulse pounding so hard I could hear it. The duffel bag wasn't forgotten, it was packed. That meant something. It meant a decision had been made, a choice set in motion long before I had ever found that damn shirt. Emily wasn't just hiding him. She was hiding something bigger. I had been so fixated on the idea of her cheating, so consumed by the thought of another man in my house, that I had overlooked the more terrifying possibility. The baby. A wave of nausea rolled through me as the realization slammed into my chest. The baby wasn't mine. Emily's body tensed as if she could hear my thoughts, as if she knew exactly what conclusion I had just come to. I looked at her, really looked at her, and in that moment, I saw it. The way her fingers gripped the sheets, the way her lips pressed together, the way she blinked back tears, not because she had been caught, but because she knew there was no way out now. My legs felt weak. My hands, my entire body, numb. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a one-time thing. This was a lie that had been growing inside our home for months. A lie that had a heartbeat, a name, a future that I had unknowingly built around something that had never belonged to me. The room blurred at the edges as the weight of betrayal settled deep into my bones. I thought about every ultrasound appointment, every time I placed my hand on her belly and felt the baby kick, every whispered promise of the life we were supposed to have. It had all been a lie. And worse, she had been trying to run before I found out. That was what the packed duffel bag meant. That was what the messages meant. It wasn't about me finding out that Jacob had been here. It was about me finding out that he had never really left. The baby wasn't mine. It was his. And she had been planning to take that secret to her grave. A cold numbness spread through my limbs as I stared at her, waiting, hoping, for some kind of denial, some desperate explanation that would make all of this disappear. But she didn't speak. She didn't even try, because she knew the truth was written all over her face. And that was the moment I realized I had already lost everything.